The town I grew up in was a quintessential rural community, nestled amidst acres of sprawling farms, the landscape dotted with abandoned churches, and the streets lined with aged, time-worn houses. Economic struggles were a common theme in our tight-knit neighborhood, where property taxes seemed like a pittance compared to more affluent regions. The residents of our town were a colorful mix of characters, and even our next-door neighbor, while a tad eccentric, was known for his kindness. My family was far from prosperous, but things began to look up as my siblings and I grew old enough to contribute to the household income. Our story takes place in a bygone era when the Hot or Not app was still a craze. It was a late summer when I matched with Kelly, and by September we were already seeing each other regularly. As the calendar flipped to October, Kelly and I found ourselves in search of an affordable and entertaining date idea in our small rural town, where options were limited to hiking, exploration, and dining. One day, we decided to take a different route, steering our car down a desolate road we had never ventured upon before. This road was a tranquil stretch, flanked by open fields and farmland, occasionally interrupted by patches of trees. The weather that day was overcast and misty, with a thick fog beginning to roll in. It was against this eerie backdrop that we stumbled upon a peculiar sign, a handcrafted wooden picket sign, with an arrow that simply read, "Pumpkin picking this way." Intrigued and feeling adventurous, we followed the sign down a dirt driveway that led to an old, rustic house. Nestled between the dwelling and the dense woods was a sprawling pumpkin patch. In the thickening fog, we could see hundreds of pumpkins scattered across the landscape. We parked our car next to an ancient pickup truck, the only other vehicle visible. As we stepped out of the car and ventured toward the house, we noticed an elderly couple sitting on the back deck. They welcomed us with warm smiles, their eyes sparkling with genuine kindness. The old woman, in particular, greeted us with a friendly, "Welcome, pick anything you'd like." Surprised by their generosity, we ventured into the pumpkin patch. What we found, however, were pumpkins of varying sizes and conditions, some small, some mushy, and others covered in the dampness of the fog. After a search, I managed to locate a hefty, healthy-looking pumpkin. Proudly, I carried it back to the back deck, where the elderly couple had been seated only moments earlier. Strangely, they had disappeared. Puzzled but assuming they had gone inside, we thanked them and walked back to the car. As I started a three-point turn to leave, our tranquility was shattered by an unexpected shout from outside. Both of us jumped in our seats, our eyes darting toward the source of the commotion. A middle-aged man in a cap was marching toward us, his face contorted with anger. He demanded, "Put that pumpkin back right now." Kelly and I tried to explain, almost talking over each other, that the older couple had encouraged us to take whatever we wanted. However, the man retorted, "What older couple? What are you talking about?" Perplexed, we asked if his parents were inside the house, thinking the elderly couple might be related to him. To our astonishment, he snapped back, "I ain't got no parents." This revelation left us equally confused, and a shiver ran down our spines. The man demanded to know where the pumpkin was, and I reluctantly unlocked the car door. He seized the pumpkin, issued a menacing threat, and spat on the ground before stalking back toward the house. We quickly made our exit, the enigmatic encounter still weighing heavily on our minds. In the car, a strange silence settled between us. I couldn't help but joke, what if they were ghosts? Kelly, however, was clearly rattled, urging me to stop. We both contemplated the possibility, and the atmosphere in the car grew increasingly eerie. Days later, my curiosity got the best of me, and I persuaded my siblings to visit the pumpkin farm for their own pumpkin-picking adventure. They questioned the man about the farm and its residents, but his response only deepened the mystery. He claimed to live alone, which contradicted our encounter with the elderly couple. This revelation left us with more questions than answers, leaving us to wonder who those mysterious people were that foggy day. It was a crisp, late October night when I received an invitation from my friend Connor. We were in high school at the time, and weekends were typically spent together, especially when his parents were away. On this particular Saturday, Connor's parents had left for the weekend, leaving him at home with his older sister, Chantel, who was tasked with keeping an eye on him. We settled into his family room, firing up Call of Duty on the Xbox and immersing ourselves in the virtual battlefield. Our conversation meandered through various topics: school, sports, and the ever-elusive subject of girls. As the evening wore on, Connor floated the idea of attending a Halloween party in his neighborhood. I initially hesitated, but eventually acquiesced to his enthusiasm, agreeing to go. The only snag was our lack of costumes. In a stroke of improvisation, we decided to don security staff shirts as the bare minimum of a Halloween costume. It was a fitting choice given the circumstances of the evening that would unfold. Upon arriving at the party, we were greeted by the lively sounds of laughter and music, with a cacophony of high school kids reveling in the festivities. We mingled with friends, teammates, and familiar faces, discussing school memories and partaking in the typical activities of a high school party. However, as the night progressed, I found myself growing increasingly tired, yearning for the comfort of Connor's home and a good night's sleep. Fatigued but not yet ready to call it a night, I decided to head back, leaving Connor to continue his evening. Navigating through the dimly lit streets, I eventually stumbled upon Connor's house. In my groggy state, I tried to keep my steps quiet to avoid waking anyone in the house. However, as I opened the door to the basement, I was startled by the sound of someone's voice behind me. It was a voice I hadn't expected, and it attempted to startle me with a boo. I turned quickly to face the source of the voice, only to find a tall man, seemingly in his mid-30s, dressed in a dark and eerie cloak costume. His face bore a sinister grin as he attempted a surprise gesture with his hands. Irritated and slightly unnerved, I demanded to know what he was doing there, my words slurring from fatigue. The man introduced himself as the party host's cousin, but I couldn't help but feel a growing unease in his presence. He tried to engage in conversation, but I was keen on returning to the comfort of my makeshift bed in the basement. After what felt like an eternity, he finally left, and I breathed a sigh of relief. I made my way to the basement and lay down, fatigue taking over. Moments later, I was jolted awake by a loud crash from upstairs. My heart raced, and I listened intently for any further sounds. The unmistakable sound of footsteps above began, as if someone was walking on the floor. Panicked, I fumbled for my phone and sent a text message to Connor, asking if he was home. While waiting for a response, I heard someone coming down the basement stairs. My heart pounded in my chest as the steps drew closer, my mind racing with fear and confusion. To my relief, the response from Connor arrived. He confirmed that he was at the party and not at home. I knew I needed to take action, and so I dialed 911. The dispatcher guided me through the process, assuring me that help was on the way. As I waited on the line with the dispatcher, I tried to open a basement window, desperately hoping to have an escape route. However, the window was jammed, refusing to budge. My anxiety surged as I continued to hear footsteps above, and the dispatcher assured me that the police were approaching. Moments later, I heard a crash upstairs, as if something had been knocked over. The footsteps resumed, but this time, they were moving away from the stairs and toward the front of the house. The police sirens grew louder, and the intruder must have heard them too as the sound suddenly stopped. The police arrived swiftly, and I heard their voices as they entered the house. With cautious steps, they apprehended the intruder, who had been hiding somewhere in the house. To my immense relief, I was finally safe. The officers escorted me outside as they arrested the intruder, and I recounted the events of the evening to them. It turned out that the intruder had been hiding under Chantel's bed, and his intentions remained a mystery. The next day, the incident was the talk of the town, and it sent shockwaves through our close-knit community. It served as a stark reminder that danger could lurk, even in the seemingly safest of places. The house was locked up and secured, but the eerie feeling of that night continued to linger. In mid-October, my wife Courtney and I decided to take a much-needed break from our busy lives and embark on a trip to the picturesque Catskill Mountains in upstate New York. The main attraction of our journey was the stunning fall foliage that blankets the region during this time of year. With our bags packed and anticipation in the air, we set off on our adventure. Our accommodation for this getaway was a charming Airbnb nestled near Overlook Mountain, a renowned hiking spot known for its breathtaking vistas. The Airbnb's owner, Kathy, had been exceptionally accommodating during our booking process, assuring us that her cozy cabin would be the perfect retreat. Our first day in the Catskills was spent exploring the breathtaking natural beauty, and we embarked on a memorable hiking adventure. While taking a break at the edge of a cliff, we encountered a fellow hiker named Melinda. She approached us with a friendly smile and initiated a conversation, inquiring about our travels and sharing her own experiences in the area. However, there was something undeniably peculiar about Melinda. Her behavior was marked by sudden bursts of enthusiasm, followed by moments of eerie stillness. At times, her gaze would drift off, as if she were looking at something that wasn't there. Courtney and I exchanged puzzled glances, but politely continued the conversation. After our hike, we decided to visit a nearby cafe to grab a late lunch. As we settled into our seats, we noticed Melinda sitting alone at a corner table, her gaze fixed on us. The atmosphere was unnerving, and we decided to cut our visit short and head back to the Airbnb. That evening, as we returned to the cozy cabin, we couldn't shake the feeling that we were being followed. At one point, Courtney was certain she saw Melinda lurking behind the trees at a distance. We attempted to put it out of our minds and focus on enjoying our vacation, but the unease lingered. Later that night, we were startled by persistent knocking at the cabin's front door. It was late, far too late for anyone to be visiting, especially in such a secluded area. We exchanged worried glances, unsure of what to do. The knocking grew louder and more insistent, accompanied by muffled voices and desperate pleas for help. Fearing for our safety, we called Kathy, the Airbnb owner, who assured us that she was nowhere near the cabin and hadn't sent anyone to visit. Our anxiety levels skyrocketed as we realized that we were alone, in the middle of nowhere, with unwanted visitors at our doorstep. The intruders outside continued their efforts, even attempting to open one of the cabin's windows. Fortunately, we had been diligent about keeping everything locked. With our hearts pounding, we contacted the local authorities and explained the situation. They assured us that help was on the way. As we waited in fear, the intruders outside seemed to grow increasingly desperate. We could hear their footsteps circling the cabin and their voices growing more agitated. It was a nightmarish scenario that we had never imagined when planning our peaceful retreat. Finally, the distant wail of sirens cut through the tension. The police arrived, their flashing lights casting eerie shadows in the dark forest. With a sense of relief, we watched as the intruders retreated into the woods upon hearing the approaching sirens. The police conducted a thorough search but were unable to apprehend them. In the end, the intruders vanished into the night, leaving us with a lingering sense of dread. We decided it was best to abandon our stay at the Airbnb and seek refuge in a nearby motel. Our vacation in the Catskills had taken an unexpected turn, and it was a sobering reminder that even in the most idyllic of settings, danger could rear its head. To this day, we remain uncertain about the identity and motives of those who had tried to invade our cabin. We carry pepper spray with us on our hiking adventures as a precautionary measure, a reminder that the tranquility of nature can sometimes conceal unexpected threats.